Hey everyone, I thought I'd give another guide for helping with fixing Lulzbot Minis or just Lulzbots in general. This is my original Lulzbot version 1.03 printer. It has a loving 8,000 hours on it or so, give or take, and it's got a couple issues with it that I'd like to fix. One being that the bearings in the x-axis are worn out. I'll show that in a minute. So we want to replace those bearings. And on the x-idler, there is a crack here in the printed part, and we'd like to replace that. So since they're connected, we're going to replace both and go through the process of taking it apart, putting it back together, and getting it printing again. So in order to do that, the things you'll need, number one, are the X Carriage pieces. You can get these from IT Works 3D or print them yourself. He also carries the bearings. You will need an X idler replacement, again with bearings and heat inserts. A set of metric hex wrenches. We'll see if we need them. It's always good to have markers to mark things. Adjustable wrench. Possibly a set of calipers or a way to accurately measure so we can re-level the x-axis. And one other thing, bunch of cups. Comes in handy that you can label, because as we take screws apart, you can label where the screws came from because they're all metric. They're all socket head cap screws. They all kind of look the same, so you can group them so you know which screws came from where. That's a nice trick. So I will show where the issues are, and then we'll start taking this apart and see if we can put it back together. Okay, as you can see back here, the X-idler, we have a crack here. I used acetone and ABS slurry to fix this a couple times, but I think it's time to fix it. I let it run. It's still okay, but I've noticed on the bearings, you can see how they've loosened up, and it's affecting my print quality. So 8,000 hours, it's time to replace this. So let's replace these parts. We'll get this going, start replacing parts, and get this fixed. Okay, we need to remove this plate up here to disconnect the connector for the tool head. So let's do that. Okay, we got the connector here. We'll disconnect the connector for the tool head. So that's now free. And we'll go and take out the 3 bolts that hold on the tool head to the carriage. Okay, this is the back of the carriage. You got 1, 2, 3 socket head cap screws you need to loosen. Remember when you remove the last one to catch the tool head, because once you remove the screws, obviously the tool head's going to fall off, so make sure you support the tool head when you remove the screws. Removing the bolts, remember to support the tool head in the back. So remove the 3 socket head cap screws. Put it in a cup labeled tool head so we know that these all go together. We got one more in the bottom here, says 3 holding the tool head on. It's coming loose, so make sure you support the tool head. There should be a socket head and a washer. Tool head comes off, put that to the side. All right, on to step 2. Okay, because we're going to remove this X carriage, the chain is tied to the X carriage. There's a 2 screws underneath here with hex heads that need to be removed. Run 2 here, remove that so we can take the chain off. These are little screws, guys, so they're a little tough to get to, but not hard. Once you move the wire out of the way, there we go. Okay, the chain comes right off. Get that screw. There it is. Put it where you can find it. All right, the chain is removed, so now we've got the carriage free. So the next step is, let's go to the front and remove the screws from the front to get the tool head loose. All right, these 3 screws here hold the belt tensioner on. We're going to loosen those up, and hopefully the belt tension will stay on so I don't have to retighten the belt. So we'll try it. We may have to change it later. All right, so now the drive belt is loose from the carriage. The carriage is now loose. So now what we need to do is we need to remove these smooth rods so we can get this carriage off. Next step. Okay, the smooth rods are held on by set screws here, here, and then here, hard to see, and right above the cable chain under here. There are 4 set screws. You don't have to take them all the way out, just loosen them up, and we can slide the rod out the end. When you slide the rod out the end, this will be able to come off. If you're just changing out the X carriage, you don't have to slide them all the way out, just take this piece off and then slide them back in. But because I'm changing out the X idler as well, I need to take the rods completely out. Okay, now the rods seem to be loose. I can twist them. Let's see if we can run them out the end. There it goes. Take the X carriage off. There's the old one. We'll slide the rod all the way out. Okay, because I don't want to retension the belt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to take this screw out here, which takes off the idler, and leave the belt tensioned as is. You'll need the adjustable wrench for the front. There's a hex head on the back side, and then just use your hex wrench over here to loosen that up and take the assembly off. Okay, grab your bearings so you got, and then assemble, keep them assembled. You got a washer, 2 bearings and a washer. Put your bolt through, keep everything together. 2 washers on this side, and then put your nut on top. Yep, that's everything out. So I'll keep everything together in the same order. Put that away to the side. All right, next step. We need to get this out the top. So the easiest way to do that is if you remove the screws in the 4 corners, this plate will come off and you can take it right out the top. These are just for an enclosure I have, they're the same screws on the inside. With the corners done, you just need to do these 4 corners, and that should allow the top plate to come off. So, well, 2 in each corner on both sides. It's loose. Top plate comes off. Now, I've got lights on this, so it's not going to want to. Okay, we got wires. Loosen those up. Go. All right. Top plate is off. Next step. Okay, we need to remove this top bearing holder. There are, looks like here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remove those 6. Remove the bearing, and then we'll have free access to getting the idler off. All right, now with the screws removed, we should be able to remove the idler, just like that. And now we have free rein. What we're gonna do is turn the threaded rod until the idler comes off the end of the rod. There we go. Old idler off. Now we just need to move all the parts, the old pieces to the new pieces. Let's do that. All right, we need to pillage the 4 screws off the old X carriage that held the top bearing on. So let's steal those screws. You got a screw and a washer on each of these. And now we're done with this old one. Get rid of it. Okay, so now we need our new X carriage. We need our new top bearing. Put those together with the recess on top. Take those 4 screws we just pillaged and put those in. Go. Top bearing is installed. Get rid of the old one. All right, if you're replacing the idler, we need to steal the Z-nut off the top. Three socket head cap screws on top with washers. There's our Z-nut. And get rid of your old idler. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do everything pretty much in reverse. So you can either stop here, and if you remember how to do everything in reverse, feel free to go ahead. The one thing I would recommend is, since you have everything apart, this would be a good time to take your smooth rods and use a clean cloth and just clean off dust. You don't need any lubricant or anything on the rod. They're self-lubricating bearings, but this is a good time to get all the dust and residual that were on the rods over the hundreds and thousands of hours. And you can just do this all in reverse. I'll take you through it, but you don't have to follow this now. Basically, we've got it all the way broken down. Just do everything in reverse. Okay, we're just going to tighten down the Z-nuts. They don't have to be super tight. You want them to be able to float a little bit, get rid of some of your Z-banding. So now that we've done that, we're going to clean our Z-rods, and then we're going to thread this back down onto the Z-axis. While I have this off, good time to clean the Z-rod. No lubricant needed on it. Ew. Now we can put on the axis and just turn the idler. Looks like counterclockwise. All right, once we got the idler screwed down, we're going to go put back on the top bearing holder and add the 6 screws on the side to tighten that back down. I'll just do that and we'll come on back. Okay, with the idler back on, we're going to put the lid back on, doing the smaller screws first on the sides, the 4 of those, and then we're going to do the corners. Okay, with the 4 corners put on, we're going to put on the corner brackets now. Again, mine's just got a enclosure holder, yours will just be regular screws. Okay, next what we're going to do after we clean the X-rods, we're going to start sliding those into the Z idler. Okay, we need to put on the X carriage. Okay, and this is where you may have to move the Z axis up or down to get these to line up roughly with these holes, depending on where they happen to line up. Looks like I guessed about right, though. Okay, now we're going to tighten down the grub screws, the set screws, on all four corners. Where note, remember your grub screws from your old idler, your Z idler is still in there. You need to steal those to put into your new Z axis. Don't lose them. Okay, we're going to attempt to retension this belt without taking it apart. This could be a massive failure, but we'll try. Take the belt, bring it up through the hole, and we're going to try to put the screw through. It's around the belt. We're going to take the washers and the bearings. Washer, then bearing. Let's see if we can get that on there. Let's do one at a time. Washer first. On the bolt. Good. Just a slack. Okay. First bearing. Put that in. Onto the bolt. And another bearing. Push it in. Put the bolt through. And one more washer. Just in there. All the way through. And then put on the nut on the other side. No reason to film this part, guys, but I'm just putting the nut back on and using a hex key and an adjustable wrench to tighten that back down. I'll be back after I do that. Okay, everything moves nicely. We're going to put back on the belt tensioner with the screws that you should have. These screws with washers. Attach those. Tighten it down. Okay, almost back to the beginning. We're going to take the two tiny screws here and reattach the cable chain, making sure you don't lose them. Bend the wire back, get it up through the hole. See if I can even get it. There we go. Line it up with the set screw, or the heat insert, and drive it up in there. You don't want to tighten it all the way down, you want to get the other one started, and then go back and tighten them up. Okay, connect your connector, making sure that you have it the right orientation. Put that in the recess and put on the cover. There we go. So now you need to go re-level your Z-axis side to side using your micrometers, and you're good to go. That should be it. We'll give it a test print and see what happens. Okay, so I powered it up and everything moves freely. You'll notice when you first change the bearings out in any direction, they're going to be pretty tight along the rod. They'll break in and things will start to move more easily. Stepper doesn't seem to have an issue driving it. I did have to go back and tension the belts a little bit because the belts have stretched. Other than that, it went back together. So again, probably would have taken 45 minutes to do if I wasn't filming. It's really not that hard in a couple steps. Things that I ran into, again, put things into cups, label things so you know where they go and they don't roll away from you. The other thing that I ran into that you may not see in the video is one of my Allen keys was getting dull. So for the very small Allen screws that I had to remove, they were almost stripping. I went and had to go find one of my other sets of Allen keys. Make sure you have a really good sharp set of Allen keys to get those small screws out so you don't strip the heads out. That's one thing I learned as I went along here. Other than that, everything went back together great. IT works if you don't want to print your own parts and press your own bearings. They sell the parts assembled. It's kind of worth the money, so you don't have to test and fit. I'll put a link to their site down below. They will help you get any kind of Lulzbot printer part you need. So besides that, that's in general how you change out the X carriage and the X idler. Hope you found it interesting. Hope it helps any of you out there that have to do it someday. It's not hard. You can do it yourself. Just slow and steady process.